I'm Catherine, 35 years old, the daughter who never gave anything right. That's how my father just described me to 50 people at his retirement party, in front of my husband, my brothers, my entire extended family, and half his former colleagues. The words hit like a slap, echoing through the country club's main dining room as everyone shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. My mother nodded approvingly from her seat, dabbing at her eyes like she was so moved by his touching tribute. Really touching, considering he'd just spent 5 minutes praising my brothers for their various achievements before delivering that little gem about me. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely humiliated by your own family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. My husband David, bless his heart, had been smiling politely through Dad's speech until that moment. I watched his expression change from pleasant interest to something much sharper. He set down his wine glass with deliberate precision, the kind of controlled movement that made me sit up straighter in my chair. "Excuse me, Robert," David said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room as he stood up. "Before we move on, I think there might be something you'd like to clarify for everyone here." Dad blinked, clearly not expecting any interruption to his carefully crafted narrative. "I'm sorry?" David's smile was absolutely lethal. "You just told everyone that Catherine never gave anything right. I was wondering if you'd like to explain to your guests where exactly the money for this lovely retirement celebration came from." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the air conditioning humming overhead. Dad's face went through several interesting color changes, settling on an alarming shade of gray. My mother's dabbing motion froze mid-pat. But here's the thing about my family. They've been underestimating me for so long, they'd completely forgotten who actually made their comfortable retirement possible. And my dear husband was about to remind them. Let me back up a bit and explain how we got to this delicious moment of reckoning. Growing up as the only daughter in the Patterson family was like being the understudy in a play where you never got to perform. My older brother Michael was the golden child, star quarterback, full scholarship to Northwestern, now a successful pharmaceutical sales rep. My younger brother Jake was the baby, charming and funny, who could do no wrong despite barely maintaining a C average through high school. And then there was me, boring old Catherine who got straight A's but was somehow never quite good enough. I graduated valedictorian from high school. Mom missed the ceremony because she had to drive Jake to baseball practice. I earned my MBA with honors from Chicago. Dad spent the entire graduation dinner talking about Michael's latest sales numbers. I started my own financial consulting firm at 28. The family response was lukewarm congratulations, followed by questions about when I planned to have children and settle down. You know what's funny about being consistently overlooked? And I use funny in the most sarcastic way possible. It gives you a lot of motivation to prove everyone wrong. While my brothers were coasting on family praise, I was building something real. My consulting firm specialized in investment strategies for small to medium-sized businesses, and I was good at it. Really good. Which brings us to Patterson & Sons Construction. Yes, that Patterson. My father's company, the family business that was supposedly going to support our legacy for generations. The company that was hemorrhaging money when I quietly stepped in 5 years ago to help with their financial planning. Dad never officially asked for my help, of course. That would have required admitting that his business acumen wasn't quite as sharp as he liked to pretend. Instead, Mom casually mentioned over Sunday dinner that they were having some cash flow challenges, and maybe I could take a quick look at their books. Just family helping family, nothing formal. That quick look turned into a complete financial overhaul that saved their company and set them up for a comfortable retirement. But apparently, that story wasn't quite as inspiring as my brother's various accomplishments. The quick look at Patterson & Sons books revealed a disaster that should have been featured in a business school case study titled How to Run a Successful Company into the Ground in 10 Easy Steps. Dad had been treating the company bank account like his personal piggy bank for years. No investment strategy, no retirement planning, just pulling money out whenever he wanted a new truck or felt like taking Mom on a cruise. The construction business was solid. Dad actually knew how to build things, and his crews respected him. But the financial management? Let's just say there's a reason they don't teach construction management and advanced investing in the same program. When I dug into their records, I found money sitting in low-interest checking accounts. No diversification, no long-term planning. They were basically one major equipment breakdown away from bankruptcy. But here's where the story gets interesting. And trust me, you'll want to remember this part for later. Instead of just reorganizing their existing money, I convinced them to let me invest their profits. Every month, instead of letting Dad spend the surplus on whatever caught his fancy, We funneled it into carefully selected investment portfolios: municipal bonds, blue-chip stocks, some strategic real estate investments. Nothing flashy or risky, just steady, smart growth. The transformation was remarkable. Within 2 years, their investment portfolio was generating enough passive income to cover Dad's salary. By year 4, they could have retired comfortably, even if the construction business disappeared entirely. I turned a company that was living paycheck to paycheck into one with a 7-figure investment portfolio. And here's the kicker. Dad started taking credit for their sound financial planning at every family gathering. Apparently, he'd always been good with money, just needed to apply himself to investing. Mom loved to brag to her friends about Robert's business acumen and his impressive retirement fund. Have you ever had family members take credit for your work? Drop a comment below if this sounds familiar. I have a feeling I'm not alone in this experience. The brothers, meanwhile, were too busy with their own lives to pay much attention to the family business finances. They assumed Dad's newfound financial success was just the natural result of his construction expertise finally paying off. David knew the truth, of course. He'd listened to me stress about the monthly investment decisions, celebrated with me when our strategies paid off, and held me when I cried with frustration after family dinners where Dad pontificated about his financial wisdom while I sat silently picking at my dessert. "Why don't you just tell them?" David had asked after one particularly galling Sunday dinner, where Dad gave a 20-minute lecture about the importance of smart investing to Jake, who had never saved $1 in his life. "Because then they'll never see me as anything but their financial advisor," I'd explained. "Right now, I'm just the daughter who never got anything right. If they know I'm responsible for their comfortable retirement, I become the daughter who's useful. I don't know which is worse." David had understood, but I could see it bothered him. My husband came from a family that celebrated each other's successes, where accomplishments were shared and praised openly. The idea of hiding such a significant achievement was foreign to him, but I knew my family better than he did. If they knew I was managing their money, every family gathering would become a business consultation. Every conversation would include questions about market performance and investment advice. I'd become the family bank manager instead of their daughter. So I kept quiet and let Dad enjoy his retirement planning meetings, where he'd nod sagely at the financial statements I'd prepared and make pronouncements about market timing that were completely wrong but sounded authoritative. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my entire childhood trying to earn their respect, and now I was actively hiding the one accomplishment that might have finally impressed them. But at least I was building something real while they were living in their carefully constructed fantasy. My consulting firm was thriving, partly because the success I'd achieved with Patterson & Sons had become a fantastic case study for potential clients. Turns out, transforming a failing family business into a profitable enterprise with solid retirement funding was exactly the kind of track record that impressed other business owners. I just couldn't tell anyone which family business it was. Which brings us back to that retirement party and Dad's loving tribute to his disappointing daughter. The country club dining room was getting more uncomfortable by the second. Dad was standing at the podium, mouth opening and closing like a fish, while David remained standing, waiting for an answer. The 50 guests were all staring, probably wondering if they were about to witness a family meltdown at what was supposed to be a celebration. "I'm not sure what you're implying, David," Dad finally managed, attempting to regain control of the situation. "I'm not implying anything," David replied smoothly. "I'm asking a direct question. You just told everyone that Catherine never got anything right. I'd like to know where you think the money for your retirement came from." My mother jumped in. Ever the diplomat. "David, perhaps this isn't the time or place." "Actually, Mom," I said, standing up beside my husband, "I think this is exactly the time and place." My voice was steady, calm. Dad just gave everyone a detailed account of what he thinks of his children's accomplishments. I think David's question deserves an answer. You could feel the tension ratcheting up another notch. This wasn't how Patterson family gatherings usually went. We were supposed to smile, nod, keep things pleasant. We certainly weren't supposed to challenge Dad's version of reality in front of an audience. But something had shifted when he'd called me the daughter who never got anything right. Maybe it was the public humiliation, or maybe it was just 35 years of being underestimated finally catching up with me. Either way, I was done pretending everything was fine. "Robert," David continued, his tone conversational but with an edge that made me fall in love with him all over again. "When you hired Catherine 5 years ago to help with your business finances, what exactly did she accomplish?" "I never," Dad started, then stopped. Because technically he'd never officially hired me. That would have implied that I was qualified to help, that my expertise was valuable. Instead, I'd volunteered my services for free because family is family, and we help each other out. You never what? David pressed gently. You never hired her? So she volunteered to completely restructure your investment portfolio and save your company's financial future out of the goodness of her heart? The room was dead silent now. My brothers were staring at me like they'd never seen me before. Several of Dad's colleagues were looking between us with obvious fascination. And that's when I realized that David wasn't just defending me. He was about to destroy the entire narrative my family had built about their successful patriarch and his disappointing daughter. Perhaps we should sit down and discuss this privately, Dad said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. He could see exactly where this was heading, and it wasn't anywhere good for his carefully crafted retirement celebration. Why privately? I asked, genuinely curious. You just shared your opinion of my accomplishments with everyone here. I think it's only fair that they hear the complete story. David pulled out his phone. Robert, should I show everyone the investment portfolio balance? The one Catherine built from essentially nothing? Or would you prefer to tell them yourself how her financial management turned your struggling construction business into $1 million retirement fund? The collective intake of breath from the audience was audible. My brothers looked like they'd been hit by a truck. Mom had gone completely pale, her hand pressed to her throat. Dad's face cycled through several emotions before settling on desperate damage control. Catherine certainly contributed to our financial planning. Contributed? David's laugh was genuinely amused. Robert, she designed every investment strategy, selected every stock, negotiated every bond purchase, and managed every aspect of your portfolio growth for the past 5 years. Your contribution was signing the papers she put in front of you. I should probably clarify something for those of you watching along at home. David isn't usually this confrontational. He's actually quite diplomatic, the kind of man who can disagree with you while making you feel heard and respected. But apparently, watching my father publicly humiliate me had triggered his protective instincts in a big way. David, Mom tried again. This is really not what, Janet? I interrupted. Not appropriate? Was it appropriate when Dad spent 5 minutes listing Michael's sales achievements and Jake's college graduation before announcing that I never got anything right? Was that the right time and place? Michael finally found his voice. Katie, we had no idea. Of course you didn't, I said. Because you never asked. None of you ever wondered how Dad suddenly became this financial genius after 40 years of treating money like a renewable resource. Jake was staring at his hands, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this conversation had taken. I mean, we knew Dad had started investing more seriously. Dad doesn't know the difference between a municipal bond and a savings bond, I said flatly. 6 months ago, he asked me what a dividend was. But sure, he's been making all those sophisticated investment decisions himself. The beautiful thing about truth is that once you start speaking it, it becomes impossible to stop. All those years of staying quiet, of letting Dad take credit, of being the family disappointment while secretly funding their comfortable lifestyle, it was all coming out now. And honestly, it felt fantastic. Dad was making one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Catherine, there's no need to exaggerate your role. Exaggerate? David's voice carried a note of disbelief that made several guests lean forward in their seats. Robert, should I read them last month's portfolio report? The one Catherine prepared showing a 300% return on your initial investment? That's private financial information, Dad said quickly. You mean the private financial information that you've been bragging about to anyone who'll listen? I asked. The impressive retirement fund you're so proud of? The one that's allowing you to have this lovely retirement party at the country club instead of wondering how you'll pay next month's bills? The audience was riveted now. This was better than any dinner theater they could have attended. A real-life family drama unfolding right before their eyes, complete with financial revelations and long-buried resentments. Catherine, Mom said, her voice strained, please, think about what you're doing. What I'm doing, Mom, is telling the truth for once. You know, that thing we're supposed to value in this family? I turned to address the room directly. For those of you wondering, yes, I am the family disappointment who never got anything right. I'm also the person who took my parents' construction business from near bankruptcy to financial stability, created an investment portfolio that's generated over $2 million in growth, and designed the retirement strategy that's paying for this entire celebration. The number hit the room like a physical force. $2 million. That's not pocket change, even in this crowd of successful business owners and professionals. Michael's jaw was literally hanging open. 2 million? 2.3 actually, as of last week's market close, I confirmed. But who's counting? What do you think will happen next? Drop your prediction in the comments. I have a feeling some of you might be surprised by how this plays out. Dad looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. The man who'd just finished telling everyone about his disappointing daughter was now facing the reality that his disappointing daughter was the reason he could afford to retire at all. But the real shock was yet to come. "Robert," David said, his tone shifting to something almost gentle. "I think there's something else your guests should know." I looked at my husband sharply. We hadn't discussed this part. David was going off script, and I wasn't sure where he was heading. "Catherine didn't just save your business," David continued. "She turned down multiple opportunities to work for larger firms because she was committed to helping family first. She's been offered positions at 2 major investment companies in Chicago, both with starting salaries that would have doubled her income. That was news to everyone, including my brothers. I'd never mentioned those job offers to the family, partly because I knew they wouldn't understand why I'd turned down more money, and partly because I hadn't wanted them to feel guilty about how much time I was spending on their business instead of building my own career. She also, David said, personally guaranteed the loan when you needed new equipment last year. Her credit, her collateral, her financial reputation on the line to keep Patterson & Sons operational." Dad's face went ashen. That loan had kept them afloat during a particularly challenging period when 2 major projects had been delayed. Without it, they would have had to lay off half their crew and possibly declare bankruptcy. "The bank required a personal guarantee," I explained to the increasingly fascinated audience. "Dad's credit wasn't sufficient for the loan amount they needed, so I used my house and my business as collateral to secure their financing." "Jesus." "Katie," Michael breathed. "We never knew." "You never asked," I repeated. "None of you ever asked about the details. You were just happy that the money problems went away and Dad could keep running the business like nothing had changed." The truth was, I'd been managing their financial crisis for years while they remained blissfully unaware of how close they'd come to losing everything. Every month, I reviewed their cash flow, adjusted their investments, and made sure they stayed solvent. It was like being a financial guardian for people who thought they were completely independent. "So let me get this straight," Jake said slowly, clearly trying to process everything. "You've been, what? Running their finances for 5 years? For free?" "Not for free," I corrected. "For family. There's supposed to be a difference." The distinction landed like I'd hoped it would. This wasn't about money. It was about recognition, respect, and the fundamental assumption that family members support each other without keeping score. Except apparently, we did keep score, just selectively. "I think," Dad said carefully, "we might have gotten off on the wrong foot here." "The wrong foot?" I laughed, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "Dad, you just told 50 people that I never got anything right? That's not getting off on the wrong foot. That's throwing your daughter under the bus at your retirement party." "I didn't mean—" "What did you mean?" David asked. Because from where I was sitting, it sounded like you were dismissing 5 years of Catherine's expertise, dedication, and financial sacrifice for your family's benefit. The thing about my husband is that he's extraordinarily good at asking questions that cut straight to the heart of the matter. It's what makes him such an effective attorney and such a formidable opponent when he's defending someone he loves. "Robert," said a voice from the audience. I turned to see Jim Morrison, one of Dad's longtime friends and business associates. "Are you telling us that Catherine is responsible for your investment success?" Dad was trapped. He could either admit the truth or continue lying in front of people who knew him well enough to spot deception. "Catherine has been instrumental in our financial planning," he finally admitted. "Instrumental?" I repeated. "That's an interesting way to put it, like saying Mozart was instrumental in composing his symphonies." A few people in the audience chuckled despite the tension. I was apparently inheriting Dad's gift for dramatic timing, just using it for a slightly different purpose. "Perhaps," Mom suggested desperately, "we could discuss this at home?" "Why?" I asked. "So you can spend the next week rewriting history and convincing yourselves that Dad's contributions were more significant than they actually were. So you can find ways to minimize what I've accomplished and preserve your comfortable narrative about the disappointing daughter." The room was absolutely silent. I'd crossed a line from defending myself to actively attacking the family mythology, and everyone knew it. "Catherine," Michael said quietly, "we're sorry. We really had no idea." "You had no idea because you never wanted to know," I said. It was more convenient to assume Dad had figured out investing on his own than to ask uncomfortable questions about where his sudden financial expertise came from. That hit home. I could see it in their faces, the recognition that they'd been willfully ignorant because the truth would have complicated their comfortable assumptions about family roles and abilities. But I wasn't done yet. "There's something else," I said, reaching into my purse and pulling out a folder I'd brought for an entirely different purpose. "Something I think you all should see." David looked at me questioningly. This definitely wasn't part of any plan we'd discussed. 6 months ago, I said, opening the folder. Peterson Capital offered me a position as senior investment advisor. Starting salary of $200,000, plus bonuses, plus profit sharing. I turned it down. I handed the offer letter to Michael, who read it with widening eyes before passing it to Jake. 2 months ago, Harrison Financial Group offered me a partnership track position. Initial investment of $50,000, with projected earnings in the high 6 figures within 3 years. Another letter, another round of shocked faces. Last month, David's law firm offered me a position as their in-house financial consultant. I would have worked with their corporate clients on investment strategies and portfolio management. The salary would have been comparable to what a senior partner earns. This time, David looked surprised. Katie, you never told me about that conversation with my partners. Because I turned it down without really considering it, I said. I've been turning down opportunities for 5 years because I was committed to helping family first. I thought family loyalty meant something. I thought building wealth for the people I love was more important than building wealth for myself. The silence was profound. Everyone was processing not just what I'd accomplished, but what I'd sacrificed to do it. But apparently, I continued, family loyalty is a one-way street. I give up career opportunities to manage your finances. I risk my credit to keep your business afloat. I work for free to build your retirement fund, and your response is to publicly announce that I never got anything right. Dad's hands were shaking slightly as he gripped the podium. Catherine, I had no idea. That's the problem, Dad. You never wanted to have an idea. You wanted the results without understanding the process. You wanted financial security without acknowledging who provided it. I stood up, smoothing down my dress. But you know what? That ends tonight. The room held its collective breath. David, I said, turning to my husband, remember that conversation we had about me joining your firm? He nodded slowly, clearly uncertain where I was going with this. I'd like to revisit that, because I think it's time I started working with people who value my expertise instead of taking it for granted. The implications of my statement hit the room like a thunderclap. If I stopped managing Patterson & Sons' finances, what would happen to their carefully maintained investment success? Catherine, wait, Dad started, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished, I said. Everyone here tonight has heard about your financial success, Robert. Your impressive portfolio, your comfortable retirement, your smart investment strategies. I think they deserve to know what happens when the person actually responsible for those achievements decides to focus on her own career instead. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. You see, I continued, addressing the audience as much as my family. Patterson & Sons has been successful because someone with actual financial expertise has been guiding their decisions. Someone who understands market trends, risk management, and long-term growth strategies. Someone who's been working without credit, without compensation, and apparently without appreciation. Michael looked panicked. Katie, you can't just what? Stop working for free? Stop subsidizing a business that's apparently run by someone who thinks I never get anything right? Jake had gone completely pale. What about Dad's retirement? Oh, the retirement fund is safe, I assured him. The investments I made will continue generating returns whether I'm managing them or not. But future growth? Strategic adjustments based on market conditions? Tax optimization? Portfolio rebalancing? I shrugged. That requires ongoing expertise. The kind of expertise that, according to tonight's speech, I apparently don't possess. Dad finally found his voice. Catherine, please, let's discuss this privately. Why? So you can convince me to keep sacrificing my career for your benefit while you continue taking all the credit? So you can promise to appreciate me more while still treating me like the family disappointment? David stepped closer to me. Katie, what are you saying exactly? I turned to look at him. This man who'd just spent the last 20 minutes defending me against my own family. I'm saying that Harrison Financial Group's offer is still on the table. I'm saying that I'm tired of hiding my light under a bushel while other people shine. I'm saying that maybe it's time I started working somewhere that values excellence instead of tolerating it. The room was absolutely silent except for the soft clink of silverware as someone nervously adjusted their place setting. Effective Monday morning, I announced. I'll be submitting my resignation as unofficial financial advisor to Patterson & Sons. I recommend you find a qualified professional to take over portfolio management. I'll provide a comprehensive transition report, of course. Professional courtesy. Dad looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Catherine, you can't be serious. Oh, I'm completely serious, I said. And Robert, the next time you give a speech about your children's accomplishments, you might want to make sure you actually know what those accomplishments are. I gathered my purse and stood up. David immediately rose beside me. his hand finding mine. "Thank you all for a lovely evening," I said to the room. "I hope you've enjoyed learning about the Patterson family dynamics as much as we've enjoyed sharing them with you." And that's how I walked out of my father's retirement party and into the best career decision I ever made. The aftermath was educational. Within 24 hours, Harrison Financial Group had not only renewed their partnership offer but sweetened it considerably. Word travels fast in financial circles, and apparently the woman who'd turned a construction company into a multi-million-dollar portfolio was exactly the kind of talent they wanted on their team. My family's reaction was predictably dramatic. Dad called 17 times before I finally answered. Mom showed up at my office crying about family unity and forgiveness. Michael and Jake tag-teamed me with phone calls about responsibility and loyalty. Funny how they discovered those concepts the moment they realized what they were losing. The most interesting call came from David's law firm. Turns out several of their partners had heard about the retirement party incident through the legal community grapevine. Suddenly, that consulting position they'd casually mentioned was being presented as a serious career opportunity with significant growth potential. Patterson & Sons hired a financial advisor within 2 weeks. A perfectly competent professional who charges them $4,000 a month for services I'd been providing for free. Their investment returns dropped by 40% in the first quarter after I left, partly due to the new advisor's conservative approach and partly because they'd lost the kind of intimate knowledge about their business that comes from family involvement. Meanwhile, my partnership at Harrison Financial Group exceeded every projection they'd made. Turns out, having a track record of managing family money successfully translates beautifully to managing money for clients who actually appreciate your expertise. Within 18 months, I was generating enough revenue to qualify for equity partnership. The real validation came when Peterson Capital reached out again, this time offering a senior partnership position with a compensation package that made my previous career look like volunteer work. They'd been watching my success at Harrison and wanted to discuss bringing my client base to their firm. Dad's health scare last spring resulted in another round of family meetings about forgiveness and moving forward. I attended, listened politely to speeches about family bonds being more important than money, and then explained that my issue had never been about money. It had been about respect, recognition, and the basic courtesy of acknowledging someone's contributions before dismissing their worth. We have a relationship now, my family and I. It's different than before. More formal, more boundaries, but also more honest. They know exactly what I bring to the table, because they've experienced what it's like when I'm not at the table. David still talks about that retirement party as his proudest husband moment. "I've never seen anything more beautiful," he says, "than watching you finally stand up for yourself after years of being underestimated." And you know what? He's right. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is refusing to accept less than you deserve, even from family, especially from family. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe. And remember, your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to recognize it. Sometimes you have to do the recognizing yourself. These days, I manage investment portfolios for clients who value my expertise, work with colleagues who celebrate my successes, and come home to a husband who's never once taken credit for my accomplishments. It's amazing what life looks like when you stop accepting crumbs and start demanding the whole feast. And Patterson & Sons? They're doing fine. Different, but fine. They learned to value financial expertise by paying market rates for it. And I learned that sometimes the best way to love your family is to stop enabling them to take you for granted. Best retirement party ever, really. Just not for the reasons my father intended.